Good Thursday evening. So every single day we hear how bad the economy is going. Oh, it might be getting better. Oh, it's still really bad. More layoffs, higher prices on just about everything for quite some time. But today, news in the good column. President Biden spoke in Virginia about the economy. In his opinion, is showing improvement, up nearly 3% in the fourth quarter of last year.
We're on the right track. Roads and bridges are being built. Factories are coming online. People are back to work. Families are breathing just a little bit easier, as my dad.
Well, Republicans would disagree. They believe that Biden and the Democratic Party are responsible for inflation remaining still quite high. So how do we sort through all of that as regular people and try to figure out what's really happening and where it might be going? We asked Kent to do it pretty much on a weekly basis. And so we asked him again today. Hey, Kent.
Hi, Jana. Yeah, thanks for that, by the way. If I'm being honest, I have resorted to wearing my glasses in an attempt to at least look smarter. Because after taking a close look at the GDP report, which we're talking about today, which shows a growing but slowing economy, and talking to experts who describe a growing but slowing economy, predicting where we go from here is more confusing than ever. If you're struggling to understand where in the world our economy is going, it's okay. So are the experts.
There was almost a parody of a survey of economists that happened a couple of weeks ago that said 52% of economists think that there's better than a 50-50 chance of there being a recession in 2023.
Oh, come on. So let me get this straight. 50% of economists think there's a 50-50 chance of going into a recession.
That was 2 weeks ago. So I think that number will have changed, and less than 50% would now think that we are going into a recession in 2023. So there's your good news.
All I hear is a coin flip.
That's a fair way to put it. And I don't think this report necessarily changed it from a coin flip.
Tyler Schipper is an economist and a professor at St. Thomas and says, on one hand, our GDP did flip from negative for the first 2 quarters of last year to 2 straight quarters of growth. But he says it's also important to note that the growth has slowed from 3.2 to 2.9%.
The good news here is this was the economy being resilient in the second half of 2022. I think that's kind of the important story, that things will be tougher in 2023, but maybe not drastic like we've come to think about recessions, like a financial crisis or a pandemic recession.
This economy is solid.
Chris Farrell, senior economics contributor for NPR News and Marketplace, says despite a real housing recession right now and recent headlines about tech layoffs, overall jobs and spending are holding steady while inflation keeps inching down. So in other words,
We're telling a story about an economy that's slowing down. The consumer's getting a little more cautious. In the GDP report, there is evidence that businesses are investing at a more cautious pace, but economists have a terrible track record at forecasting recessions. It's absolutely awful. So they have good reasons why they're saying we will probably have a recession in 2023. But again, we keep getting reports that say, well, not yet.
which brings us back to this economist.
Yes, we're wrong. We're wrong a lot. I'd be the first person to tell you that.
Would you rather be wrong to the positive side than wrong to the negative side?
There's a good argument here for I'd rather be the optimist. If you have pundits out there saying, things are looking good, people behave like they look good, things end up being good. On the other hand, if everybody's really being pessimistic and that starts to trickle into consumer sentiment, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
And speaking of that positivity, going back to that 50-50 recession forecast, while it certainly doesn't tell us much right now, if you look back at October, 2/3 of economists predicted at that time that we were heading for a recession in their opinion. So there does seem to be some growing positivity, and I will settle for that.
It must be the glasses. But what Tyler was saying at the end there is true, and I know you've been told this from economists, that what we think is happening actually turns out to be what is happening in terms of how we spend, right, Kent? That psychological part?
It is. There's a lot of psychological aspect to it. And if all of us are worried that the sky is going to fall, we're going to behave differently. So we have to be realistic, but we also got to balance that positive and negative.
I thought you were going to say, if we all think the sky's going to fall, the sky's going to fall. Put your
will
glasses.
behave like it is, Jen.
Got it. Okay. Thanks so much, Kent.